It all started at the beginning of the month. I was at work, sitting in my cubicle browsing Facebook when my pocket started vibrating. I rubbed my tired eyes as I pulled my attention away from the mindless social media I was absorbing and fished my phone out of my pocket. I glanced down at the device and noticed that I was being called by my favorite person in the entire world. Unknown number. I clicked the tiny button on the side of my phone to silence the intrepid buzzing and focused my attention back on my monitor. Wendy got another A in school. That's nice. Clark was dominating a plate of wings at the local pub. I wonder if they're any good. As I raked my finger along the scroll wheel on my mouse, I was startled by my phone vibrating once more, albeit a shorter buzz, signifying a possible message. I once again pulled my phone out and was disappointed when I read, "One new voicemail," illuminated across my screen. Probably just a lengthy telemarketer proposition, I thought. I set my phone down on my desk and continued working. You might think I'm lazy at my job, and I am. Well, not entirely. I process spreadsheets for a data company, and I must wait for new spreadsheets to be sent to me in order for me to process them. Typically, at the start of my shift, I'm sent quite a few emails containing the data that needs processing for the day, and I'm usually finished with the bulk of it by lunch. Then, over the course of the rest of my shift, I may get 2 to 5 more pieces of data to process, but I knock those out quickly. The rest of the time, I just browse the internet, waiting for my shift to come to an end. Hell, my boss doesn't even care, so long as I get my work done and I do it correctly. Once the clock struck 6, I grabbed my bag, my phone, and saluted my boss as I passed by his office. He returned a slight nod and I headed down to my car. Sitting in my car, I pulled out my phone and tapped on my call button, navigating to my voicemails. My phone has a cool feature that will automatically attempt to transcribe any voicemail so I could read it instead of listening to it. However, when I looked down at it, the words "unable to transcribe" seemed to mock me. I huffed, pressing the voicemail button, and held the phone up to my ear. Static poured from my phone like a tap, and I was just about to click the delete button on the message when I heard a voice.
992X Alpha. Subject located. Acknowledge.
The message was broken and garbled. It took a second playthrough to correctly identify what they were saying. I had no clue what the numbers at the beginning of the message meant, and as far as the rest of the message was concerned, I was at a loss. I thought perhaps one of my friends thought he'd get a laugh by sending me cryptic messages. So instead of giving him the satisfaction, I deleted the voicemail and headed home. A week flew by and I was in the middle of putting the final touches on a spreadsheet when my phone vibrated again. I had put the previous incident out of my mind by that point, but once I read "unknown number," I stared blankly at it. If it was one of my friends, I wondered what they would do if I answered it. So I did. I swiped the call bar over and put the phone up to my ear. There was silence. After a few seconds, I said, "Hello?" Static began to build from the other end, and after a moment, I heard that same voice from before speaking. They said,
You are in danger. They are coming for you.
I thought this was just some joke, so I replied, "I hope they bring pizza." And with a self-induced chuckle, I hung up the phone. I went home that night and laid in bed thinking about that call from earlier. I didn't recognize the voice at all, and if one of my friends were messing with me, I wasn't sure how they were generating all that static on the other end. The following morning, as I walked out to my car sipping my coffee, I noticed something odd. There was a man standing on the corner across the street from me. He was staring at me, and when I looked up and met his gaze, he turned and began walking away. I thought about calling out to the man, but reasoned against it. It was probably just an early morning commuter who happened to look in my direction. But then I thought back to the call, and what they said. They are coming for you. I perished the thought and went to work. While I typed away at my desk, I started to get the feeling of being watched again. It was similar to earlier in the morning when that man was looking at me. I glanced out of the window that was next to me and looked down. Across the street, while countless people moved along the sidewalk, there was a person standing motionless in the crowd. They were looking up at my building. They were looking up at me. I quickly turned away and focused more intently on my work. I felt like I was just making myself paranoid, that the random calls I had received were just nonsense and it was forcing me to notice things. Maybe the guy outside wasn't actually looking at me, probably just admiring the office building. Even though I was trying to think rationally, when I got home that night, the first thing I did was make sure every door and window was locked tightly. Nothing wrong with being a little cautious. However, not long after I went to bed that night, I was awoken to the sound of footsteps coming from inside my living room. I sat up in my bed with my heart beating so loud I could hear it. I sat there, staring at my bedroom door, waiting for whoever it was to come through and attack me. But nothing happened. 10 minutes slowly ticked by and still nothing happened. I stayed awake the remainder of the night, staring at my bedroom door, too scared to investigate the noise that had woken me up. It was possible that I had just dreamed it, but it was just as possible that I didn't. I wasn't willing to take that gamble. Once the light of the morning sun peeked through my window, I slowly opened my bedroom door. I found no one in my living room. I searched around and found nothing out of place. And when I looked further, I found that all of my doors and windows were still securely locked. That brings me to a couple days ago. Dealing with these strange occurrences put a significant strain on my mental health, and I decided to take a few sick days from work. While that is partially true, the exact reason for me avoiding my job is that I had received another call. The voice on the other end took much longer to speak than usual. He said,
Stay inside. Shut your blinds. Don't open the door.
if this truly was just a prank orchestrated by a friend of mine, well, they wouldn't be a friend much longer, that's for damn sure. But the odds of someone I knew doing this to me was low, and was even lower for them to continue doing this. I sat in my living room the entire day watching TV with the volume off and the subtitles on, periodically taking a peek through my living room window. Hours crawled by and I hadn't seen a single person pass by my house, which I took as a good sign. I was beginning to wonder why me? What did I do to cause all this? I wondered who these people were, and I wondered if this would ever end. Then, not long after the sun had set, there was a knock on my door. I shuddered as I felt the knocks reverberate through my body. I stared at the door cautiously, before slowly creeping over to my window. I gently peeled back the curtain and saw 3 men standing on my front porch. They wore long black suit coats and were wearing sunglasses. If it were anyone else, seeing them wearing sunglasses at night would be comical, but seeing these men wear them just made me nervous. I did the only thing I thought I could do at that point. I called the police. 20 minutes came and went, and there was another knock on my door. I once again peeked through the window and saw 2 uniformed officers standing outside. The 3 men from earlier nowhere to be found. I walked over to my door and rested my hand on the lock. When I did, my phone buzzed in my pocket once more. I felt my hand flinch away from the lock as I pulled my phone out and answered it. The voice on the other end spoke sternly.
Do not open the door.
This caused me to take a few steps back, and another knock sounded. I went over to my window once again and watched as the officers looked to one another, then walked away. That all happened a few days ago. I'm not sure who has been calling me or why, or who those men even were outside. but I'm beginning to run low on food. And the mystery person who has been calling me the last few weeks seems to have stopped. I'm going to have to open the door and try to get some food soon. If any of you get a strange voicemail from an unknown number, don't listen to it. Just delete it. I feel like I might have avoided all of this if I had just done that in the first place. If you don't hear from me again, well, that means they probably got me. And if that's the case, I want you all to be careful. If they can get me, well then they can just as easily get to you, too.